I guess you're gonna have to be vertical, yeah. All right. There you go. All right.
Thank you again for your patience. Appreciate you all hanging in the heat. We do have cold water. The ice chest to my left, your right. All right, we're good to go. Good morning, friends, members of the press, leaders. My name is Derek Duba. I'm the Arizona State Lead Organizer for Common Events, the nation's leading progressive grassroots movement of veterans. Today, we're joined here today in community with leaders from around the state and city to take a stand against political violence and to call on other veterans, community leaders, community organizations to take the pledge to reject political violence in all its forms. I'm joined today by leaders of our community and survivors of the horrific attack that took place on January 8, 2011. These are not simply isolated incidents. These are norms that we can choose to refuse or to abide by. Today we are here to take a stand. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Honorable former U.S. Representative Ron Barber, survivor of the 2011 Tucson shooting, to say a few words. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yep. It's an absolute honor for me to be here today at an event that is primarily sponsored, but not only sponsored, by veterans organizations. When I was in Congress, and when Gabby was in Congress, we focused on veterans issues, both on the Armed Services Committee for veterans that way. 85,000 veterans live in this part of the state back then, probably more now. So it's one honor, obviously, to be with veterans and others today. I want to welcome our elected officials, our veterans, of course, and Command Action. We're here today primarily because civil discourse, not political violence, is the way we address our political issues. And we're here today to call on candidates and their staff and voters to condemn political violence and threats. We're here today to pledge our support for candidates who conduct themselves in a respectful and peaceful manner. 13 years ago, as was mentioned, at Congresswoman Gifford's constituent services event here in Tucson, a gunman killed 6 people, wounded 13 others. Gabby, as you know, mercifully survived that tragedy, more than survived. The memorial here at Presidio Plaza is dedicated to the memory of the good people who died that morning, those who survived, and the first responders who saved so many lives that morning. Gabby remains an inspiration to the entire nation because she was determined to take action to prevent such awful events from happening again. But there's still a lot of work to do, particularly at the federal level, where passing common sense gun laws is so hard to achieve. On the other hand, many states have taken appropriate action. We need such laws here in Arizona. We need the right people elected for that matter. Gabby's organization has been a major player in moving this agenda across the country. We're stuck when it comes to Congress. Last Saturday, a gunman has shot and nearly assassinated former President Trump. Sadly, a retired firefighter and chief died protecting his family, and 2 others remain in hospital. One person, unfortunately, died. We just can't go on like this. How many times do we have to get in front of cameras and microphones and say, enough is enough? Today, we're saying that again. 2 years ago, I was asked by the Carter Center in Atlanta to establish an organization in Arizona. We call it the Arizona Democracy Resilience Network, and our goal is to prevent and minimize and hopefully get rid of threats and of violence and violence. It's made up of organizations made up of civic leaders from across the state, faith leaders, former and current elected officials, business people, citizens who just want to restore democratic norms. We're here to present facts when factual statements are made. We're going to be busy in the next couple of months. We're here to debunk conspiracy theories. And most importantly, we're here to mitigate violence in our politics. In the 2022 elections, election directors, county recorders, and election volunteers were targets of threats of violence and in some cases actual violence. As a result, and this is a stunning statistic, in 12 out of our 15 counties, election officials, either the elected or the appointed officials, resigned rather than continue to face the threats that maybe were coming in the next election. They loved their jobs, but they didn't love the fact that their families and they were in danger. So as we prepare for the 2024 election, we'll be working hard to support and protect these public servants from threats of violence. While the Arizona Democracy Resilience Network is dedicated to this mission, we need all of you, citizens all across the state, to step up and help us stop this and how it erodes our democratic rules. We can do this by bringing back civility and respect into our elections. It's up to all of us. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's fight the fight all the way through November. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barber. Greatly appreciate all the work that you've done and continue to do to keep our community safe. And who better to speak on our community than Tucson's own Mayor Regina Romero, co-chair of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, here from the city of Tucson.
Good morning, buenos dias, everyone. It is an honor to be surrounded by veterans this morning, to all of you that have served our country with dignity. Thank you so much for your service to us. Really appreciate it. I'd like to begin my remarks by just taking a moment to ground ourselves and recognize that we're standing on history, thousands of years of history, and that these lands have been stewarded by the Tohono O'odham since time immemorial, and by the Pascua Yaqui people for thousands of years. I like starting with a land recognition because it grounds us in history and everything that we have lived through on these lands. And it's really important for situations and issues like this to ground ourselves in history and look at how the history of our country has been, right? And what have we learned from creating this beautiful democracy that we live in. Just right next to us sits a memorial that was created to honor the loss of life. The loss of life created on January 8th, 2011 because of political violence. And we created this memorial, public and private organizations, including the city of Tucson and Pima County, to remind ourselves that this should never happen again. And since the attempted assassination on Gabby Giffords, we have come out time and time again talking about what political violence does to our communities and to families and individuals. So on that day in 2011, gun violence rocked our community. And it was very similar to what we're going through now. Unfortunately, gun violence has not stopped. And fortunately, our dear Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords is here with us and fighting every single day to change this scenario. Since then, as a community, we've worked really hard together to heal. We gather today to condemn political violence and reject the violent rhetoric that has become commonplace in our country. Today, it is easy to find the type of political rhetoric that incites violence and hate, fear and division, extremism and disinformation. It is easy to find people claiming our elections are not secure and that the results are not accurate. It is easy to find examples of dehumanization and vilifying. Some of us, many of us here, have condemned situations of political violence such as January 6, 2021, one of the most violent political attacks on our democracy since the Civil War. We have condemned attacks on the spouses of our congressional leaders. We have condemned political attacks, and we will continue to do so. We know better in this country. We know better in this city. We are committed to ending political violence. We are committed to unifying our community, to unifying our country in the face of hate, division, and extremism. We are committed to making sure our elections are safe and secure, and our election workers are safe and secure. Every single person who is registered to vote can cast their ballot and feel confident, feel safe in going to drop off that ballot when they're voting. As the mayor of Tucson, I've worked to end gun violence here in our community, from advocating for common sense gun laws, to serving as the co-chair of the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, to investing millions of dollars in our community to combat the root causes of gun violence in our community, including lowering gun violence up to 80% in certain areas of our town. I am committed as well to make sure that we bring down the rhetoric, that we talk about the issues as Americans usually do. We have a wonderful tradition in our country as a First Amendment. Our Constitution memorializes our right to our opinion and to be able to talk about our opinion to our community and to our fellow Americans. It is our right to be able to do that. And it is very good for our democracy to exchange ideas. That's fine. Nobody is talking about not defending our right, our First Amendment right of freedom of speech. Nobody is saying that. What we're saying is that vilifying and dehumanizing is wrong, because that leads to violence. And many of us have been saying that ever since Gabby got shot. There is no place in our democracy, in our public discourse, for that type of extreme language and hate. No one should feel afraid to participate in the political process because of fear of violence. Believe me, I've seen the rhetoric come at me. I have seen firsthand people attacking the place where I live, the place where I work, attacking my kids. But that does not discourage me or my family to continue the work that we're doing and standing up for what we believe is the right decision for our community. We all must join hands today and be absolutely clear that we deserve better, that together we are stronger, that in community and in conversation and in the exchange of ideas, we become a stronger and stronger democracy. I usually have a saying, and I said it a lot when I first started as mayor, because we were living through COVID, which was also unnecessarily divisive. But I usually like to say that here in Tucson, we are one. Somos uno. We are one. Somos uno. One community. One family. Muchísimas gracias. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
thank you very much for those powerful words, Mayor Romero. It has never been more evident that this effort needs to happen not just from the top down, but from every level of government, which is why I'm pleased to welcome to the mic Tucson Councilman Paul Cunningham, a fellow Army National Guard veteran. Mr. Cunningham.
Today we're going to talk about public service. As a veteran, I understand that commitment. I was only 18 years old when I joined the United States Army. But after that, before I was elected, I became a juvenile probation officer, a social worker, and a teacher. I'm one of the few people that has actually worked in all four of those different jobs. I've worn the badge of peace officer. I've taught in the public school classroom. I've been a social worker going door to door, helping folks on my caseload. I've also been a United States soldier. It's a wide range of public service. To some degree, we haven't devalued public servants, but we've dismissed them a little bit in our country. We've forgotten about how valuable they really are. For me, that's a big piece of why some of this violence is taking place. We have to remember that all of our public servants, whether they're right wing or left wing, are on the same team. And we have that public service in common. One of the things that I've called for is a time to listen. We've got to get out of our comfort zones. We've got to sit across from the people that we read their things on Facebook and want to strangle them. Maybe we do. We all have those thoughts. And that's kind of what excites some of us. We have to get out of our comfort zones and meet them face to face and have listening. It's a time to listen. It's a time to talk to each other. The only way we're going to dial that down is if we start listening. Whether you're right or left, no one's going to listen to you if you're not going to listen to them. So I challenge folks to get out of their comfort zones and start listening to folks that they normally don't want to listen to. And it doesn't matter if you disagree, as long as it's done civilly. And maybe you might be surprised. We might start learning a little bit more from each other than we thought. It might be that a couple of the points they have were valid, or maybe not. Bottom line is that at least that dialogue is there. So those are the things that I'm challenging folks to think about in this coming year. At this time when we have divisive people shouting at the rain about this and that, trying to blame the other side that they're going to ruin the country. Well, if we weren't so busy pointing fingers about who's ruining the country, maybe we could work a little bit together to build the country. So I've thought about these things, and I've thought about honoring our public servants, the value of our public servants. I think if we start there, a lot of cool things can happen, not only to the community of Tucson, but to this state and to our great country. We're at a crossroads right now. We're at a crossroads in this country. What happens next will define our next 25 years until the 250th birthday of our country. I was 2 years old during the bicentennial, and I'm hoping at age 76, I'm going to be able to, at age 52, going to be able to enjoy our 250th birthday. So to do that, we have to, at this crossroads, come together. I hope that advice, while painfully obvious, is sage and appropriate for today. Thank you for having me. God bless you, and thank you, Tucson.
Thank you, Councilman Cunningham, for those powerful words of unity. Next, I'd like to invite Pima County Attorney Laura Conover to speak a few words.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being here with us. The message I think we're all sharing today is very simple. Political violence has no home in America. It has no home in democracy. And it has no home here in the state of Arizona. As so many have said, it is personal to me as well, as the granddaughter of a man who fought in World War II in the Pacific Theater, and as a sister of a first responder who goes out as a sergeant for the Tucson Police Department every day, fighting for the very foundation of our democracy to keep everyone safe. I am absolutely humbled to be here today and to have the privilege every day to stand shoulder to shoulder with common defense. I thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you today. And so it is my obligation to take that humility and that inspiration and to harness that energy as Pima County's top law enforcement officer to be the very best partner I can be to law enforcement and to our Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, as we are out engaging in trainings on how to make sure that the very right to vote will be free and fair and safe all the way through the rest of this year. We are talking about concrete, constructive trainings because Arizona law protects against voter intimidation. And so we are making sure that local law enforcement and statewide have a full and complete grasp of those Arizona laws and how they will protect every single voter, and making sure that the community knows that there will be absolutely no tolerance for anyone who dares to try to infringe on that most basic, fundamental, and important right. Thank you so much for being here.
Well said, Attorney Conover. Next, I'd like to invite someone from Moms Demand Action here in Tucson, Pat Mach, to talk about how just as important as it is that we are speaking this message from the halls of Congress all the way down to City Council, it is just as important that we're having these conversations within the family unit at home. Pat Mach.
So first I want to tell you a little bit about Moms Demand Action. It's a grassroots movement of Americans fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. We help pass stronger gun laws and work to close loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our families. We also work in our communities and with business leaders to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. We know that gun violence is preventable. We're committed to doing what it takes to keep families safe. We even have shirts that say, "Man enough to be a mom." So you can join us by texting JOIN to 64433. 64433. Political violence is terrifying. I know. I'm Patricia Maish, a very fortunate, physically uninjured survivor of the assassination attempt on my Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. In my opinion, I believe 2010 was the start of the extreme and serious vitriol of political violence. Pandora's box was flung open wide. I believe it seriously started with consequences during the election of 2010. That election cycle, Sarah Palin put a bullseye on Gabby Giffords. Gabby warned that those remarks come with consequences, and we now know it did. Even after that election, Sarah Palin said, "Don't retreat, reload." To my knowledge, she never apologized nor indicated her comments were inappropriate, out of line. President Biden's reported remarks at a private fundraiser event saying it's time to put Donald Trump in a bullseye. He apologized as a result of that passing. He apologized as a result of that assassination attempt, and saying it was a mistake for him to say that. That's progress. The recent terrifying act of violence towards Mr. Trump is another reminder that no one is immune from experiencing gun violence. Gun violence continues to tear apart American communities. Just in a few hours from now, it will be 12 years since 12 people were assassinated at the theater in Aurora. One young man, Alex Tees, went to the university. He was murdered there protecting his fiancée. So, gun violence continues to tear apart American communities, not just underserved communities, but all socioeconomic communities. There are numerous examples of this fact. The consequences of weak gun laws and guns everywhere culture created by firearms industry is deadly and expensive both in dollars and in physical injury. Some tend to think surviving a shooter, they just pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and start all over again. Ron Barber can attest that that's not the truth. It's definitely a misconception Our laws allow extreme easy access to firearms to persons who are endangered to self and others, extremely easy access to persons filled with hate to be ready and able to murder a person because of a difference in color, difference in language, difference in country of origin, difference of almost anything, difference of political standing or political opinion. Consequences, deadly consequences. I'm aware, I'm fully aware. I have credibility, just like Ron has credibility, just like these veterans have credibility. And I'm honored to be with them. My husband is a vet of the Vietnam War. My father was a vet of World War II. My brother was a Vietnam vet. There were 10 siblings on each of my father and mother's side, so we have about 15 vets in our history. We all know that political violence and gun violence should have no place in our society. No one should live in fear of being murdered or injured. No one should live in fear of getting the call, the knock at the door, the ring of the doorbell, the notice that someone they love has been murdered or involved in gun violence. Some of you know, some of you can only imagine. I hope that this event, this veterans-initiated event, will demand our leaders to take a stand to end the violent rhetoric and make a difference. This will start the moment of bipartisan reflection on the dire need to stop the violent political rhetoric. As a result of my witnessing 6 dead by firearms and 13 wounded by bullets, that just didn't get up the dust myself. I not only want to stop the rhetoric, I also want to, along with the majority of Americans, help legislate common sense, evidence-based gun safety measures that are proven to reduce violence, thus keeping our friends, our family, our children, our politicians, our communities safe. From local legislators to state legislators to federal legislators, we must demand that our leaders support stronger gun laws and reject gun extremism. Despite our political difference, the majority of Americans are unified on the need for safe guns. Thank you very much for letting me share this with you.
Thank you so much for those words, Pat. And Pat made a very important point that I'd like to draw you all to. There are people of influence in all of our communities. There are veterans in all of our families. If you're a veteran who is hearing these messages and you feel moved to stand with us, there's a QR code in front of me, and you can find this pledge to sign on to on all of Common Defense's social media. Few people standing behind me are more involved in their communities at various levels, building bridges, than Pima County Supervisor, Chair of District 5, Adelita Grijalva. I am honored to welcome her up here to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Buenos dias. I thank you for joining this morning, such an important issue, and a special thank you to Common Defense and Veterans for Responsible Leadership for organizing this event and announcing a national pledge to condemn political violence. My name is Adelita Grijalva. I'm the chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. The attempted assassination of a former president, I'm sure made many feel concerned and insecure about the intensified political violence in our country. President Biden said it perfectly in his Oval Office address last Sunday. While we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors, we're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're fellow Americans. We must stand together, no matter how strong our convictions. It's unfortunate but true that this community is no stranger to political violence. Standing here, right near the January 8th Memorial in Pima County's historic courthouse, is a reminder of this. This memorial honors 19 people, including former U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords, our friend, U.S. former Representative Ron Barber, who stands here in solidarity, were shot by a lone gunman on January 8th. This memorial represents the unity our community shows in the face of violence, and a reminder to us all, of what horrific actions can happen when people choose violence to have access to dangerous weapons. Let's be clear, no one should ever be afraid to participate in our democracy. And that is something that is so frightening right now, because I have been in public service for decades, from the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board to here at the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and I am well aware of the emotions and tensions that arise when advocating for a cause that you support. Our board has received threats of violence directed at the board in public meetings from people that have differing opinions. Just a month ago, we're sitting there and someone came up to call to the audience and said that 4 of us should be put in front of a firing squad. Just like in casual conversation. With this said, I think that it's so critically important that we understand that when you're talking about differences in political opinion, you feel very passionate. But that's not a reason to make the person on the other side that you think is on the other side of your political opinion less than a human being, less than a mom, less than a grandparent, less than a neighbor, less than a fellow shopper at Costco. Like, that is one of the people that I saw that comes to calls to the audience and regularly throws a lot of insults and threats. Face to face, we're standing in line at the Costco. We are neighbors. And as a mom of 3 babies and someone who is a Tucson native and lived in here our entire lives, it's so difficult right now to ask people to get involved in our political process because they're afraid. They look at the things that we have to deal with and say, oh, I don't want to do that. And that's horrible, because our democracy should be reflective of the people in our community. And if we can't get people who just want to be part of a solution together, that's where we're going to find ourselves in a real serious problem. So I'm so glad that we have veterans, many of whom have seen acts of violence and war because they were serving our country, come out and say, we are all pledged together against political violence. And when, we have to make these spaces, public spaces, welcoming for all. And I know that periodically when we're standing in a group like this and we see people walking by, we don't have metal detectors, we don't have anything, we worry. We worry, and that is so tragic and sad. Not just for all of us who are your elected representatives, for all of the public who have the right to take part in their local government and deserve to have their voices heard. Thank you to everyone here who is an advocate. I pledge to continue fighting for spaces that are nonviolent and welcoming for all. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, County Supervisor. I'm ready for Alva. Next, somebody is going to join us to speak on the reality that this issue does not only affect us here in the city, does not only affect us here in the county, it affects us all over Arizona. I'm proud to introduce a man who has committed his work to bringing democracy and peace to rural Arizona as well. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran, Pablo Correa.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. My name is Pablo Correa. I'm the Executive Director of Rural Arizona Engagement, or RAISE. Our mission is to educate, advocate, and coordinate in rural communities so they may gain access to the civic education, engagement opportunities, and voter registration, because everyone, no matter how remote they are, deserves their voice to be heard. As a Marine Corps veteran, my overseas experience and commitment to the Constitution inform and help me lead our approach, guiding our concern with rising political violence in Arizona. It is my passion for civic engagement, voting, and our communities that has led me to take a stand on the grounds within neighborhoods of rural Arizona. I am no stranger to knocking on doors as a volunteer, paid canvasser, and even a candidate. But most importantly, I now lead an organization pursuing one of the largest get out the votes efforts in the history of rural Arizona. Our canvassers and organizers are walking in neighborhoods in Pinal, Pima, Yuma, Yavapai, Coconino, and other rural counties. Unfortunately, I too, and our folks on the ground are no stranger to threats, intimidation, political violence. Teams of volunteers and canvassers on a daily basis experience this. We have been threatened online and in person. We have been harassed. We have been stalked in the field and had guns pulled on our team. We have even had dogs let out on individual canvassers. And these folks are from our neighborhoods. They're from our communities. Like other speakers have mentioned, they are our neighbors. They are our friends. It is important to remember that it's our First Amendment right and the right of our staff in this organization. And it should not be a dangerous endeavor to have communication, to have common overlay and common cause on our various issues. But we have to acknowledge that right now, not just on the ground in Arizona, it's getting hot. And I don't mean temperature, I mean the political climate. You know, it's like a building pressure cooker. We need to let some of that steam off. And the way we do this is leading into our duty as citizens, and not just veterans and not just folks that are serving our communities in various aspects, but our duty to the First Amendment to have these conversations. Political violence is nothing new in Arizona, and this is why this conversation is more important than ever. Fear of violence for sharing our political ideas in homes and our neighborhoods should not be the norm. We got to work on connecting with others and bringing the temperature down. And the First Amendment, I'll once again say, is not there just for show, just to read. It's there to be exercised, and that exercise of that First Amendment, it builds those muscles, it builds that strength to be able to look across the aisle, have those conversations, and bring down that temperature together. Thank you, everybody, for the time this morning.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Again, Executive Director for Rural AZ Engagement, or RAISE. Next, I'd like to invite a dear friend of mine, Arizona native, resident, here speaking as a private citizen, and as a United States Marine Corps combat veteran of our Afghanistan campaign. Leonardo Ariza is going to share some of his experience, what it looks like when political violence becomes the norm. Thank you, Leo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I spent most of 2011 in Sangin, a small town in the Helmand province of Afghanistan. During my time there, part of the overall mission was overseeing local elections to prevent intimidation and violence as a fledgling democracy developed. At the time, the limited polling data available showed the Taliban-aligned candidate would lose his gubernatorial bid. As the voting day was coming to a close, a mid-1980s silver-blue Toyota Corolla came barreling down the street before the explosives inside were detonated at the small town's only polling place. Rather than accept the fact that their extremist ideology did not have popular support, the Taliban instead chose to murder dozens of innocent people who only wanted their voices to be heard. In the time following, I had never imagined the possibility of political violence of that sort taking place here in the United States. Defending and protecting my country was paramount in my motivations to join the Marine Corps, and the oath that we all take is to defend the Constitution of the United States. It's the system and ideals by which our disputes are resolved. To date, that car exploding in Afghanistan is the loudest thing that I've ever heard. The rising drums of politically violent rhetoric and the malcontented eagerness of warnings that civil war was just an inch away is starting to make my ears ring in the worst ways. I cannot overstate how much of an existential threat to our Constitution I find certain politicians to be, but it's imperative to say that assassination or any other form of political violence is not how anyone who opposes them is to defeat them. We have seen the violent rhetoric develop here in Arizona. Several months ago, Senate candidate Kari Lake told her supporters to strap on a Glock, a handgun, ahead of the 2024 elections. And on the note of Kari Lake, another political leader she wanted was to lynch the Maricopa County reporter because he simply did his job. He certified Katie Hobbs' victory as the governor in 2022. It's worth mentioning that the county recorder at the time was a staunch conservative and has since spoken out against election deniers. It has resulted in threats to him and his family for simply not conceding his integrity to the big lie. And while we may not agree on anything else, I do believe firmly that the county recorder performed his duties honorably. The open advocacy for civil war or escalating political violence sounds disturbingly similar to the rallying cries of violent extremists my brothers and sisters in arms fought against in the Sangin district. If faced with consequences, they might backpedal and say it was all in jest, but joking around about killing political opposition should not be normalized as banter in any context. The years that I spent in the Marine Corps have imparted me with many invaluable lessons, some of which were unfortunately written in blood. Chief among them was the responsibility of leadership and the significance of words to set action into motion. Excuse me. Whether they call it stochastic instigation or dog whistling, various politicians and other influential figures vying for positions of real power consistently refuse to take responsibility for their words, their actions, and the predictable violence that follows. The Taliban car bomb that still rings in my ears to this day was a result of feckless political leaders who viewed their supporters and their opponents not as countrymen, but as pawns to advance their ambitions to seize power. It is essential that I say to anyone who may hear my words that we have to start treating violent rhetoric for what it is, a precursor to physical violence if it is left unchecked. We have to speak to one another with the civility that we would afford to someone who's on our proverbial team. We can and should disagree on policy. We should be passionate about the future of our country. But calls for civil war or any other form of violence are not laughing matters. All it takes is one extremist with a car packed full of explosives or one person on a rooftop with a gun in Pennsylvania to take a careless comment as a call to action and begin a cycle of bloodshed that nobody wants. We solve our disputes with voters filling in their ballots, not with extremists emptying their ammo boxes. Ballots, not bullets. This is not and will not become a partisan phrase if we can seize this moment and recommit to peaceful means. Thank you.
Well said, Leo. And thank you for your courage and sharing your story. Finally, I have one of the leaders of this charge at the national level to call on all veterans around this country to take this pledge. It is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce Joanna Sweat, Common Defense's National Organizing Director, United States Marine Corps veteran. Thank you, Joanna.
I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for being here. We've heard from a lot of different people from our community that represent a lot of different fractions of our community. And what's sad is that what we have all in common today right now is experiencing political violence. But beyond that, we have far more in common because we still stand shoulder to shoulder in face of this adversity, of these threats, and we stand up for our communities. So we would be remiss if we didn't have a call to action. It's important to us as veterans to have the long game strategy. After what happened on Saturday, and thinking about how we all felt after January 6, 2021, we knew it was now more important than ever for us to stand up, to stand with folks from all sides of the aisle, and to denounce political violence. So you have this QR code up front here that you've seen. So I just want to share with you what this petition states. As organizations serving and representing veterans and military families, we are united in condemning political violence of all kinds.
Regardless of individual politics, an attack on any candidate for office, elected official, or election official is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on the system of self-government that our men and women in uniform have served and sacrificed to protect. Our fellow Americans look up to our community to provide leadership and to set politics aside because of our commitment to the Constitution and culture of putting service to the nation first. Many of you have started this charter in the post 9/11 era of constantly thanking us for our service. And in that thanks, the connotation may be that we're done or have ended our service. And that's just not true. Many of us have witnessed political violence abroad. We have a clear and universal message to our fellow Americans that violence has no place in American politics. A fundamental tenet of American democracy is to settle our differences at the ballot box. Our shared commitment to a peaceful democratic process is what distinguishes our systems of government from others throughout history, or where we've deployed abroad. We still have a role to play in lowering this temperature in today's political discourse and reminding ourselves and our fellow countrymen and women that we all have more in common than not. And that commonality can come from joy instead of tragedy. Our strength as a nation is our unity and patriotism transcends politics. Let's all do our part to support the bedrock of our self-government and the greatest source of American pride, a peaceful political process with free and fair elections. If you are compelled by these statements, then you should sign this pledge. If you are an elected official in the state of Arizona, in any capacity, in this United States of America, you should sign this petition. Because the next step for us is to ask those who haven't denounced political violence why they haven't. What side of history do you want to be on? I know I want to be on the side with these folks right beside me. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished speakers. Thank you, members of the press. Thank you all for being here. I hope that somebody's words today connected with you. Hopefully all of them. We can choose peace. It's not too late. Thank you. And if anybody would like to interview any of the speakers, you're welcome to reach out on a one-to-one basis.